So today I'm going to talk about MLS salary, and that today specifically MLS Player Association have announced the salary for every single player and also the team salary for every single team. And I'll also leave a link in the description of an athletic article wrote by Sam Stego and Jeff Reuter in terms of kind of analyzing the MLS salaries that the MLS PA basically released. And by the way, all of these information I hear roll on the board come from that article. So if you want to kind of read it in words and instead of just kind of look at this long wall of text here on the board, go ahead and click that link in the description below. But first of all, let us actually talk about the top earner, because that's always been one of the things that a lot of people are very interested in terms of whenever the MLSPA release the salary of each of the players. But the top earner so far, including guarantee compensation, is Jiren Shakira with 8.15 million. Now this is also where it gets interesting, where while he is the top earner so far in MLS, he's not going to be the top earner for long, because we know in July, as we kind of fast forward to this point, Lorenzo Insigne, once he does join Toronto FC after signing a pre-contract with them this off season, he's going to earn $15 million, which is incredibly a lot of money in terms of he's going to earn, and it's going to be right up there in terms of the most expensive salary that a player has ever received, which I think that still is David Beckham. I remember when he came into the league back in 2007, he got $25 million, and he got a tons of different things, and even a rule name after him, and then of course even getting the rights to have an MLS expansion team, which is where Inter Miami basically come into play. But yeah, I mean, when Insigne does come into the league, he's going to earn $15 million, which is almost three quarters, as I'll talk about the top MLS team salary this season, which is Atlanta United has, and that it's hard to believe his $15 million is going to be three quarters of that. But besides, Jiren Shakira currently owns the title for the top earner in MLS with $8.15 million of guaranteed compensation. The top five other player, or the four other player in the top five earner, including Chicharito at $6 million, Gonzalo Higuain, who I thought last year he was the top earner with like $7 million. It's now down to $5.79 million. Hanzo Persuelo with $4.69 million, and Josie Altidore with $4.26 million. Though the interesting thing about Josie Altidore's salary is that I think New England is only paying him like around $1.5 million, because when they bought him, I think they got him on a TAM deal, and the reason why it's still labeled like $4.26 million and above the $4 million threshold is because TFC basically exercised that buyout contract when they decided to move on from Josie Altidore, and it seems like that's basically the salary. So that's good news for New England, that the fact that they're actually not paying Josie Altidore like that excludes the amount, but certainly for bad news for TFC, because if they want to get out of his contract, they had to pay a lot to do so, and I believe the $4.26 million, somewhere right around that, is what they had to pay Josie Altidore in terms of buying out the contract. Now, as I mentioned, speaking of TFC, once Lorenzo Insigne does come into the league, he will earn $15 million with TFC, which, by the way, when that does happen, as I'll talk about the top MLS team salary, TFC will basically be at the top again. I mean, TFC has been kind of near the top, and I think there was one year that they were top of the league in terms of the MLS team salary. They will be at the top once Insigne does come into the league, and by then that number is going to be inflated by a lot, because I think TFC right now, they're somewhere around $16 million in terms of salary. Like literally half of the team salary is going to be Lorenzo Insigne, and that they are going to really blow by the water and get into almost a $30 million range once Insigne does come into the league with TFC. Now, in terms of another interesting stat, is that 91 players right now in the league makes more than $1 million, which is up from 78 last season. And I remember a couple of years ago, it's hard to believe the fact that we have now more players made over $1 million in this league. I mean, I think maybe 10 years ago that was definitely not the case, and there was a lot of talks of who, of course, is going to be that first player to be kind of the $1 million player. I mean, if you not include David Beckham, when he, of course, got like $25 million, there was that question of who exactly is going to be that player, and I believe, was it maybe 2013 and 2014 when we finally saw a player that actually reach $1 million. I'm not sure though, but we basically have come a long way in terms of that point, and that right now, literally about 1/10 of the active players in the league right now earns more than $1 million compared to what we saw with last year with just 78. Now, in terms of the average guaranteed compensation, so this is kind of something that we mentioned before in the collective bargain agreement, how the league is continuing to raise the salary and also the guaranteed compensation money. And right now it is at 427, or no, not 427, $472,008, which is a 14% increase. And then in terms of the medium guarantee compensation, 248,333, which is a 20% increase. And last year it was also mentioned in the Atletico article that the MLS player median guarantee compensation was only at $200,000. So that is actually a pretty big increase compared to last season. And again, because with the current CBA that's going to run all the way to 2026, that's going to continue, and that the salary is going to continue to balloon at a rate where we could see an average guarantee compensation hit that $1 million mark. I mean, don't be surprised. I would say maybe the next 10 years that with the next CBA that is agreed between the players and also the owner, that we could actually reach that mark, because it feels like every single year that number continues to increase, and it's just going to continue to increase as the season goes along. Now, let's talk about top MLS team salary. So, as I mentioned, Atlanta United currently is at top with $21 million, but that's going to change once Toronto FC gets Insigne, and that I think their amount is going to be like $30 million, which is incredibly crazy. Like, I think that's the highest in terms of a team that has paid their players in terms of salary. But, as we'll talk about here at the bottom compared to other leagues, that's still not really that much. And again, a lot of the reason why a lot of these teams hasn't really spent that much is because of the salary cap. I mean, if it wasn't for the salary cap, I can definitely see teams spending somewhere like $60 and $70 million. And you can definitely see some of these Liga MX team where, down in Liga MX, there's no salary cap, and we see some teams are like spending up to like $80 to $90 million on salary. And again, that's kind of what is the reason why the salary in this league is incredibly low compared to other leagues, because you can only sign certain player in terms of the salary before you hit that salary cap, and then you do have the option to sign free players that are designated player that counts outside of the cap, and even with that, the number still doesn't reach as high as what you expected if there is no salary cap in this league. And again, I'm also not going to get into the discussion in terms of whether or not if MLS is going to get rid of the salary cap, because I think that's a discussion for another day. I mean, this has been just such a long going debate alongside with promotion and relegation in MLS about whether the league should get rid of the salary cap, and whether or not if the salary cap is what's holding back this league, and especially the discussion of the fact that is a salary cap the reason why MLS team can't win CCL. Well, the Seattle Sounders basically proved this season that of course is not the case. Though again, I know there's still going to be naysayers that say, well, yeah, the Sounders of course won it and stuff like that, but that's only a one-off thing, and that some naysayers will say, well, maybe that's just kind of an outlier until if teams continue to perform at a good rate. And I think the other discussion, some people might be saying that they should get rid of the salary cap, is the fact that teams cannot compete in MLS and CCL and expect to do well in both competition. I mean, there's not enough roster spot in terms of, or there's not enough depth for each of these teams to play in the top of their level in both of the competition. And that's another thing that brings in terms of maybe MLS should expand the roster to more than just the 30 players that they currently have, and also I think more than the 24 player that if you don't count in terms of the supplementary roster. Now, looking at the top 5 MLS team salary, as I mentioned, Atlanta United with $21 million. Now, I did put a question mark because there is this situation with Ezekiel Barco, with him being on loan with River Plate, and we still don't know how much exactly River Plate is paying part of the salary alongside with Atlanta United. So it's roughly around that range. But they are the top MLS team salary. Behind them, it's the LA Galaxy, who I think last season they were the top MLS team salary. This season with 20.53 million. Then you got Inter Miami with 18.88 million, but I also put a question mark there too, because remember the whole Blaise Matuidi situation, which I won't get too deep into, because if you're a Miami fan and you're watching this, I'm pretty sure you're sick of me talking about the whole scandal and that they're basically paying the price because of it. But from what I heard, at least from this Athletic article, talk about that salary could be upward to around $5 million. And if that's the case, then Inter Miami actually has the top MLS team salary, because right now I think Matuidi, oh god, I forgot how much he is earning. He's earning around about the $2 to $3 million range. But if you add to what he's actually earning right now, which is around $5 million, then it would be right up there in terms of the top MLS team salary, and that Miami would be over the $20 million mark. But besides that, we got New England with 18.14 million. Again, a lot of that comes from Josie Altidore, but also Carlos Hill being one of the highest earner in the league, and that their DP basically earns top dollars in their team. And then you got the Chicago Fire making 17.65, or giving their players $17.65 million. Again, pretty much half of that is currently paid to Jiren Shakira, who is the top earner. And then I believe they also pay a hefty amount of their new number 9 Jero Torres that they signed for Atlas. Like that signing, I think they paid him like somewhere around $3 to $4 million range. So a lot of that comes in terms of why the Fire is right now at the top 5 MLS team salary, and the top 5 in terms of team paying their players so far this season. Now, in terms of the bottom 5 MLS team, at number 1 we got RSL, who has the lowest, or spends the fewest on team salary of only $10.47 million, and RSL has always been near the bottom, but with a new ownership, it's kind of not surprising that is the case. Though I don't think they're going to be no longer going to be the team that is going to be in the bottom 5, because once they do sign Jefferson Savarino, and there's a report his salary going to be like $2 to $3 million, which easily is the most that RSL pay for a player. It's not only going to get them down to get out of the bottom 5, but it's going to be kind of right near the middle of the row in terms of teams that pay their player in terms of the team salary. Then you got Charlotte FC at $10.71 million, and again, it's not a surprise that Charlotte is down there. I mean, I know their owner Tippett is a rich owner, probably the richest owner in the league, but there's been that criticism of him not spending that wealth and not invested in the team, and knowing the fact that Charlotte had that problem with signing not enough players heading into the expansion season, and the whole Miguel Angel Ramirez meme about they are currently screwed coming into the season. Yeah, that kind of plays the reason why they haven't spent a lot, and that they still have some roster spot that they need to fill on, and they're kind of finally started to do so, because with some of the signings that they recently made, one of them recently getting Andre Shinishiki from the Colorado Rapids, you can see that finally it started to fill those spots, and that I think the salary is now starting to be much higher than what it was, because before that I think they were the lowest spending team in terms of team salary in the league. Then you got the Portland Timbers, only at $11.31 million. Now this kind of surprised me, because I would assume Sebastian Blanco would take a lot of that, and I'm assuming that maybe is the case, but I haven't checked to see how much that Blanco is making currently, but yeah, it's kind of surprised the Timbers are not really that high in terms of paying their player. And I don't know if anything, if that has anything to do with the whole off-field situation that they're going through right now, but I'm pretty sure some people are kind of surprised the fact that they are in the bottom 5. And then you got the Colorado Rapids, again, not surprised, because their team has had an ownership group that has notoriously decided to do this money ball approach, not paying their player a lot, but still built a competitive team, only $11.39 million. And then Orlando City, another team that kind of is a bit surprised to be this low in it, especially with some of the big signings that they they made this offseason. I mean, I guess maybe some of the big signing they made, yes, they pay a lot of transfer fee, but they haven't. That's only transfer fee. That does not actually reflect on in terms of the amount of salary that their team basically pay, which is of course, whereas right now they're being at the bottom five with 11.51 million. Now, let us actually get into compared to the other leagues, because, there's always that discussion, where does MLS rank in terms of salary compared to other league? Well, yeah, the other leagues around the world, especially in Europe, is still way ahead of MLS. In fact, in the Athletic article, they mentioned that Sheffield United in their 2021 season, I think that was the season when they, of course, went down, and they have also been the team that is the lowest spending team in the EPL. They still spend 3 times more than what Atlanta United currently is right now. And again, it's not a big surprise, because the Prem is the richest league in the world, and that you can even see some team that is in relegation zone is still paying their player a lot. I mean, you compare it to some of the big team around the EPL. Oh, they're basically spending like hundreds and even up to like $200 million in terms of spending on salary. I mean, I think Manchester United, they're probably up to like right around that $200 million range too, and that I think they also have been spending the most in terms of player salary out of any team in the Premier League. And then you even look at league. So far there's 19 clubs in League that is averaging $70 million, and notice I mentioned 19 because the one team that I leave out of is PSG, because PSG is basically head and shoulder above every single league team in terms of spending. Like PSG, they also spend like upwards like $200+ million on player salary, and then the team that spends the lowest, Nimes in League well, they might be the lowest spender, but they still spend $5 million more than what Atlanta United currently has, which is $21 million. And then of course, even looking at the championship, we saw that all but 5 EFL championships side have spent more than the salary of any other MLS team so far. So even on the second division of English soccer, you can definitely see the fact that, yeah, I mean, they are, even in the second division, a lot of teams are outpacing MLS team in terms of the spending. And I think this is a good kind of benchmark, because a lot of people talk about the championship and MLS. If you compare MLS to some of these European leagues and maybe are on part of, the English Championship has always been a league that people say that, yeah, it's almost on par in terms of it. And it kind of also helps when we did see a couple of MLS players last season go to the English Championship. Now, in terms of player salaries, that is currently not performing, so these are basically the worst contract in the league. And I would say even the most expensive, or the player that earns the most so far, should belong into that list, because I know in the Athletic they mentioned Gonzalo Higuain currently has the worst contract with $5.79 million that Inter Miami pays him. And we even mentioned the fact that when he came into the league and he only scored like 1 goal and he was earning like $7 million, that was by far one of the worst, if not the worst contract we've seen since Chicharito came into the league with $6 million, and he only scored like 2 goals for the Galaxy. But you can maybe even make the case that Shakira I mean, Shakira so far he is definitely not performing at a rate that the Fire is hoping he can be, and that the 2 goals he scored has come from the penalty spot. So he hasn't scored an open play goal so far, and he's earning like $8.15 million, and his assist number isn't even that good too. I mean, the amount of assists that he has is definitely not good enough to justify to pay a player that is like $8.15 million. But other players that is definitely are earning very well, but they're not performing, and that their team is paying a very bad contract for them. Franco Jara, a player that in terms of long term, which is the worst player that has already been in the league for these past couple of seasons, that teams are still paying him for exclusive amount. It's Franco Jara for FC Dallas, $3.23 million. Now Jara, I would say that he's kind of almost like at very best an average kind of number 9 in this league, but for a number 9 that is one of the most expensive in the league, I mean, yeah, that's just way too much if you ask me, in my opinion, and easily right up there in terms of the worst contract in MLS right now. Another bad contract is Douglas Costa with $3 million. I mean, I hate to say I told you so, Galaxy, but I told you so. With the way that I knew this was not going to work out. And I know Galaxy fans might have said, well, maybe he can rediscover that good form he had a couple of years ago. No, he hasn't really done well whatsoever. And again, just like Jiren Shakira, really the only goals that we have scored so far, I believe, this season has come from set piece. Though, unlike Shakira, who's scored penalty, at least Costa, of course, was able to score some amazing free kick goal, which of course include the last one, which, I mean, I guess maybe the last one you could say that it kind of was an open play goal because it wasn't really a direct free kick goal that he scored in the last game against FC Dallas, but still, it did kind of come from a set piece, and I guess maybe you can count that as a set piece goal. But yeah, he's only earning $3 million. And then we get to Adrian Hunou, who equally has one of the worst, if not the worst contract right now in MLS. Like, he is literally earning $2.69 million right now by basically doing nothing for Minnesota United. Like, he only played 85 minutes so far this season, no goal, no assist, and he's earning $2.69 million. And that, again, I know the Loons have been trying to offload Hunou potentially either in the summer or even in the off season, but they gotta do something about it because this is absolutely ridiculous for a guy that, I thought this year he was gonna have a comeback year after he was actually pretty decent when he came into the league, and now it doesn't seem like that's the case because he's been basically sitting in the Adrian Heap doghouse for this entire season. And then we got Gaston Jimenez, again, another player that has been in the league for the past couple of years and has been under a very bad contract. In fact, he's kind of like the only remaining player that was part of that Fire team when they basically enter what was supposed to be the first new era, moving back to Soldier Field, and had that ugly crest. He was part of many players that came in through the Fire that, it clearly didn't work out. But unlike many of those players where the Fire kind of dismantled the core, Jimenez is still there, and he's earning $2.36 million, but still not contributing at a rate, especially with him being a DP player for the Fire. Now, we go to talk about players on salary that provide excellent value. So these are the players that are definitely worth the contract that they are earning. There's a lot of names in terms of that compared to players that are currently on really bad contract that teams are paying for. Diego Fagundes with $450,000. I mean, I know a lot of attention with Austin's success has been on Sebastian Driussi, but you gotta give Fagundes some credit too. I mean, I think he's also the top assist leader right now for Austin FC, and he's playing at a level that we have not seen Diego Fagundes perform ever since his early days with the New England Revolution. Dane Sinclair, also one of those players, $302,000. What's interesting about Dane Sinclair is that, he didn't really start to become a player that is on excellent value with the contract that he's on until when Tyler Miller, of course, went down. Or actually, he didn't went down, but he actually did he? Yeah, I think he went down. I was thinking about a COVID leave that Tyler Miller has been, but ever since Dane Sinclair basically stepped in, he's been pretty much the number one keeper and pretty much earned the number one spot back from Minnesota United. Then you got Nuhu, who, I mean, for a very long time, Nuhu has always been on the most friendliest salary, and just another example of why the Seattle Sounders, I mean, you notice the Seattle Sounders is not the top 5 MLS team in salary. I mean, they're actually right up there in the top 10, but what's the reason why the Seattle Sounders has been so successful is that the monies that they spend and that they on players, pretty much all of them has been in hit, and it's also not surprised that one of those player, and probably the player that is on the most friendly contract right now in Nuhu, only earning $344,000. I mean, the way that he play, he should be definitely earning more than he is currently earning right now. And even with a player that maybe is in the high range, but is definitely a bargain, is Georgi Mihajlovic. I mean, I mentioned before when Montreal decided to get Mihajlovic from the Chicago Fire and they pay like $1 million, and how I kind of mentioned, while it does sound like a good move, it's also a very risky move with the way that, yes, Mihajlovic had a great breakout season with the Fire, but there's that skepticism of whether or not if he can continue. And not only the fact that he continue, boy, he has now turned into an MVP level. And for a guy that is an MVP level and is under $1 million, it is an absolute bargain that Montreal basically are paying for Mihajlovic. I mean, I think maybe next year he is definitely due for a big contract, though. Again, there's that question: is he going to be with the team next season? Because again, I'm assuming he's another player that there's got to be a lot of European teams that is drawing interest with the way that he is playing right now. And also, the other thing that I will also mention that teams that provide excellent value on the players that's currently on salary. Mention the Rodon brothers. I mean, while Christian Rodon is definitely making a lot, 981K, with the impact that he's been in, I mean that is just absolutely incredible. And the same goes with his brother Alex Rodon. He actually earns the lowest in terms of players on salary that provide excellent value out of that list, only 232K, and has become one of the more important players for that Seattle Sounders defense. Now, moving on to medium MLS ban on goalkeeper and defender. So this kind of looks at teams in terms of how many percent that they have spent their salary on players in specific position. Well, for goalkeeper and defender, only 28.9%, which is the lowest out of the free category, and that's not a big surprise because we know in this league you do not spend most of your salary on goalkeeper and defenders. You definitely spend a lot of that on attacker, and that's where we also see a lot of DP signings. Most of them came in the attacking end or even in the midfield end, which is why the next point when we talk about MLS team that spend on midfield, it's 34.7%, and then unsurprisingly the medium that MLS teams have spent on forwards is 35.5%, which is the highest out of the three, but not by much. I mean, between midfield and forward, we've seen teams continue to spend a lot of money on that, and it makes sense because when you look at the midfield, you definitely want to invest in your midfield, as that is kind of the most important part of the field, especially that's also part of the field that, in my opinion, has the most important role in this league, which is the number 10 role. And then in the forward position, you definitely want to invest on those wingers and also invest in a number 9 that can score goals, and that's something that not every team has had that luxury to do so. Now, in terms of looking at the MLS highest pay starting 11, these are the player that is currently earning the most in their position. In goal, we got Eloy Rome with $883,000. I mean, we no longer have a goalkeeper that actually made up to $1 million, because I think the last time we've seen it was Tim Howard, who I think he made like something like that above like $1 million and something like 2 or 3 million, because the Colorado Rapids make that cardinal sin and decided to sign him on a DP contract, which was worth it when Tim Howard came back to MLS, but definitely not worth it with the remaining years where he really fell off a cliff. Then we got DeAndre Yetlin in the right back position, earning $848,000. Then you go to the center back, and we did talk about there is two center back DP so far. We got Carlos Salcedo with $2.35 million and Thiago Martins with $1.96 million. And while Thiago Martins, I mentioned before that for NYCFC, I mean, they kind of commit the cardinal sin of you don't spend one of your DP on a center back. One thing that I know about Thiago Martins is not only the fact that he's been very good for NYCFC, but also he's got a buy down kind of option, in that there is an option later on that they can actually buy his contract down to TAM level. And when you look at the amount that he is earning, he's definitely getting to that point where it's between the TAM and DP threshold where they can easily buy him down. But in the case of Carlos Salcedo, yeah, it's already looking like it's a bad contract. In fact, there's one of the reasons why TFC is doing so bad this season is that if you look at in terms of the amount and the average in terms of how each team is in the position, and also you look at the position and also add the amount that team has spent. TFC is probably at the top of the list in terms of the team that spend the most, and they don't get out of the best of the player despite paying just an incredible amount of money on the team. And that also is kind of an example of why money sometimes doesn't buy you success in this league. I almost said happiness, because that's the kind of the old cliche about money. But in terms of left back position, we got Ronald Maturita with $807,000, and then in the defensive mid, Victor Wanyama with $3.09 million, while the highest earner in the league, but rightfully justified because Victor Wanyama has been very good for Montreal this season. He's been pretty good with Montreal ever since he came to that team and came to MLS. In the center mid position, we got Carlos Hill with $3.5 $4 million. And then in the right wing position, we got Carlos Vela with $4.05 million, which I could maybe even say that I would put Carlos Vela in the players on salary that is not performing, which sounds crazy, but when you look at Carlos Vela number, he hasn't really produced at a rate that we thought that he did. I mean, yes, he scored a hat trick on opening day, but ever since that, when I thought that maybe this is the year he's gonna really prove people that, you know, as he said that this is gonna maybe be his last season with LAFC, which turns out that was not the case with him signing a contract extension, that he's gonna really go out with a bang, and yeah, he has not done so, and that again, you know, when I do get a chance to talk about the top goal scorer for LAFC, Carlos Vela is actually not up there. In fact, I don't think I mean, I know that he did score a couple of goals since his hat trick, but he's definitely not at a rate that he should be worth like $4.05 million. And you just wonder, you know, with the amount of injury problem that Carlos Vela has had, has that really started to make him regress in terms of his career? Because, you know, when you suffer so many injuries, it's always tough to try to come back to one and still perform at the highest level. And I just wonder, again, if that is the case, because he was on the IR table a lot last season at a rate where I think that really started to affect his performance too. Now, in terms of the central attacking mid position, we got Hanzo Persuelo, and another player that I could easily put it there on that list, because despite him being the MVP, he's getting that same conversation with Carlos Vela, where, you know, he's been suffering with a lot of injuries lately, and you wonder if those injuries are starting to take a toll in terms of his performance too. And, you know, this season he is definitely not perform at a rate with TFC that's worth the $4.69 million. Then on the left wing, we got Jiren Shakira with $8.15 million. Already talked about how that salary that Chicago is eating is already started to look bad. And then Chicharito with $6 million, which last season, or at least for the beginning of the season, it has kind of looked good. But now with Chicharito struggling to score a goal, it started to kind of go back to what we saw in the first season when Chicharito came into the league in 2020, where he only scored 2 goals, and that was regarded as not only a rock bottom moment for Chicharito in his career, but easily the worst contract in MLS that season. And then, of course, the total wage bill out of all that, $36.4 million. So a lot of money in terms of if you add up all the highest pay 11. But you notice that a lot of the highest paid player position are usually around the midfield and around the attack, which, of course, again, just basically summarize why a lot of teams, and pretty much about 70% of the amount that MLS team have been spent has been on midfield and forward. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for my breakdown in terms of looking at the MLS salary. Again, I know this is a relatively long video, but kind of took a while for me to kind of explain every single part. And like I said, if you want to find more information about it, or you want to read like the whole article about all the things I've just break down, I'll leave a link in the description below in terms of that article that look at the 2022 MLS salary analysis wrote by Sam Stego and Jeff Ruder. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys see a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.